Good evening. My name is Matthew Herndon, and my reaction to the article "Body Ritual Among the Nakarima" by Horace Miner was one of shock. Was complete shock. It's mind blowing to me how people are able to derive these thoughts and belief systems and kind of just run with it. It seems that because of the rituals that were instilled by their parents and their parents before them, that these people have now not only stuck to their guns, but my goodness, the pain that they inflict upon themselves in the name of their religion, or rituals rather, is pretty mind blowing. The shrines themselves within the homes, and the way that they're kept secret and private, though there is like one family shrine, each individual in the home has their own ritual per se, that or prayer that they would say to the shrine itself. Seems pretty interesting to me. I know in our home, our prayer life is one of prayer in private, but we also come together as a family and pray over meals and before we tuck our kids into bed and stuff like that, where we encompass both individual prayer and family prayer. The emphasis that is placed on the mouth and the extent of the pain that these people inflict upon themselves and allow others to inflict upon them, my goodness, it is one of complete and utter shock. That is my reaction to this article. One thing that I would like to point out that I thought was extremely interesting was the amount of faith that these people had. Towards the tail end of the argument, Miner states that the temple ceremonies were rarely healed the individuals, but the people very rarely lost their faith in these medicine men and in their abilities to bring healing to them, though they were unsuccessful more times than not. And I thought that was very interesting. Now, in my culture, I am a Cuban American. My mother was born in Cuba. 3 of my 4 grandparents were born in Cuba. My dad was raised by his Cuban mother in Miami. We have what's called brujeria or santeria or witchcraft, and it is seen by outsiders as very taboo, very, very taboo. People in Miami who do not understand the Cuban culture much, or do not understand the emphasis placed on this particular religion by some folks, is very degrading. They look down upon these people, and they typically poke fun and make fun at them. It's very interesting to see how the religion of Santeria, how it has evolved from just a small African country in the early 1500s or so, when it came over to Cuba, and how it's connected to worldwide views in the way that people view these folks, and the way that it's taboo, and how, at least where I'm from, you can't do that because you can be associated with folks who practice Santeria, and rather than teaching our children the correct way of doing things, we point out these people's flaws and we tell them, this is what you should not do, this is how you avoid X, Y, and Z. So it obviously has a very demeaning outlook upon these people. It's changed throughout history, pretty intensely, rather. So it started off in the 1500s. Well, that's when it arrived in Cuba, rather. In the early 1500s, when the slave ships began to arrive and these people from Africa began to become enslaved to the Spaniards in Cuba. And for many, many centuries, scholar scholars and socialites believed that the social and moral evil associated with this pagan cult was unworthy of serious studies. So for a long time it went unstudied, and there was almost a span of nearly 500 years or so, up until the point where Fidel Castro in the 1980s forced out 125,000 people. It was known as the Mariel boat lift. And when these people were shipped out of Cuba and sent to the United States, the media, deemed these people as prisoners and mentally ill patients, and of course those weren't the politically correct terms that they used back in those days. But these folks, these Marielitos, weren't any different than the Cubans that came before them. The only difference between the Marielitos and the Cubans that had come before them when Fidel first took over was their socioeconomic status. A lot of the Marielitos were young or working class people, and they were African Cuban. I'm sorry, they were Afro-Cuban. And these Cuban refugees that came over, they just had the same dreams and aspirations as the Cubans that came before them. Now, a lot of them who did come brought their Santeria religion with them, and it became widespread throughout Miami. It's made its way up to New York in many different ways, and it's very interesting how people have seen this change, if you will, as severely detrimental to the United States, to the Cuban culture, to the people that live in Miami and Little Havana and things like that, because they get labeled as people who are practicing witchcraft, and it's not something that seems to be very attractive, especially here in the United States. It changed the way that people viewed themselves. It changed the way that people viewed their neighbors. As the Africans became more and more in number, and their religion, they knew their religion needed to survive only by being able to bend and sway itself to the culture that they found themselves in at that time. So they actually began to change some of their beliefs and some of their language to reflect that of the Cuban community, which was mainly Catholic. So that's where a lot of the saints came about in Cuban culture. My goodness, if you go to Miami now, there is a candle with a picture of some saint on it that it's witchcraft. And I can remember growing up, driving down the road and seeing dead animals all over the street with their heads chopped off and blood splattered on people's doors and cars, and it was and of course you get instances like that, and people point it out, and it's made to seem very detrimental to society and to the people groups of the day. Thank you so very much for your time. The article that I used for a lot of my references in this video was written by Diana Gonzalez Kirby. The name of the article is Santeria: African Influences on Cuban Religion. Thank you so much.